Cheers. Hello there, YouTube. It is Saturday morning, March the 9th, 10:27 a.m. I've been wanting to make this video for a while now, and I don't know, at least 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm up. I'm sitting in front of the computer. I'm wearing a fairly clean shirt that's not stained, so I figured, well, why not now? And so, for those, I think the last video that I made, I announced that our mom, and when I say our mom, I have older sisters, we had to put her in hospice. We had to make the decision to put her in hospice, and she has since passed away. Thank you all for your prayers. Her homegoing service was not this past week, but the week before. Here's her um, obituary. Thought I'd show it on the screen. So thank you for all of your prayers and um, well wishes. And that's what the subject of this video is kind of about. And it's, I mean, I don't even know exactly what I want to say, but it's just something that needs to be said. And it's really about life. And so, just to set this up, I'll give you an example of what happened with our mother. But um, our mom was 85 when she passed away. Praise God for that long life. And she just, up until maybe 6, 7, well, about 7 years ago, she had to start having dialysis 3 times a week. Before that, she was still driving out on the go almost every day, not sitting around the house, just always on the go. She didn't use a walker or cane or anything like that. She was getting around good. Excuse me. But then the dialysis came, and then I don't know, maybe in the last 3 years or 4 years, her health really started to decline a little bit, but she always bounced back. And so I remember October maybe of 2022, she had been in the hospital. She was really unresponsive for 3 or 4 days. Doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. They were calling us to come to say our goodbyes. They didn't think she was going to make it. And then she just woke up one day, and I don't know, after maybe 3 weeks of rehab, back to her old self. She was a tough old broad, my mom. But uh, she always bounced back. And so we had kind of talked. And so I have two older sisters. Thank God, uh, with my oldest sister, she was on all of our mom's bank accounts, and she kept up with all of her business and her bills because she had set her up to pay bills online. Because all those times our mom was in the hospital, my sister would have to go to her house and write out checks and mail them. And so she just set her up with the online bill payment thing for everything. So she would make sure all of that got taken care of. But our mom was in the hospital in December. I'm sorry, my mind, losing my mom. My mind hasn't been right since. But anyway, she had kind of talked a little bit about her end of life and what she kind of wanted things, but she never gave like specific instructions. So, for example, my father-in-law lived with us for many years here, and she would come over sometimes, and she see him. He was bedridden and feeding tube. He really couldn't, he couldn't walk. He was just bedridden, and I remember her saying she didn't want to live that way. And so that kind of helped us to kind of understand where she was. And so I say that to say, um, when she was in the hospital in December, she got out, and I don't even remember what was wrong then. I don't know if the doctors ever figured it out. But in early January, she went back to the rehab center, which is a nursing home on the first floor, and then the upper levels nursing homes. She went back there. It's the same one that she almost always goes to and has been for a few years now. She did well. After 3 weeks, she was walking again without a cane and kind of able to do for herself a little bit. She was ready to go home. And then just one morning, she just wasn't well anymore. Was, I don't want to say comatose, but she was just out of it. If you touched her, she was screaming pain, but she wasn't talking. And then the pain went away after a few days, but then they couldn't figure out what it was that was just causing her to just not be awake and alert. And over time, the doctor said they didn't believe there was anything else, and so they suggested, um, oh man, what's that word? They suggested, sorry, I think they suggested hospice care. And so my sisters and I had to make the tough decision to stop her dialysis and just let her go. And so I want to put a pin in it there. And so what I really want to encourage people to do is to make their loved ones, spouse, family members, kind of aware of what they want to happen. And if, God forbid, you become ill, or, especially like with our mom, she went from being well to not well in the course of a few hours, and we didn't have an opportunity to speak to her in that time. But what do you want your end of life? If you become incapacitated, do you want life support? Do you not want life support? With our mom, um, you eh, she if you came into the room, it seemed like she knew that you were there. If you touched her, and you said hello, she would say hello. She was recognizing our voices because she didn't always open her eyes, but she was recognizing us. She would say son when I came in, or one of my sisters would come in, she would call them by name. So she knew we were there, but she could sometimes open her eyes a little bit. She had a lot of mucus in her throat that they couldn't control, and so it was hard for her to speak. But she would try to speak, but she just had a hard time. But she was just, her eyes were closed 99% of the time, and she was just either sleeping or just there. And then she she hated she hated being in the rehab. She was always trying to get out of there as quickly as she could, sometimes too soon. And just in her, I think in her mind, she knew she didn't want to be there, and she had almost no strength, but she was strong enough to get both of her legs over the side of the bed, and then she would just fall out of the bed. She fell out of the bed 4 or 5 times, had a big gash on her forehead. But so we had to decide: do we leave her like this, or do we stop the dialysis? Because once dialysis is stopped, patients that rely on dialysis can't survive long without it. The toxins in your blood will just poison you. Uh, and so um, we had to make that tough decision, even though we weren't sure exactly what she wanted, but we were pretty confident that she would not want to live that way. And that was why we made that decision after some prayer. But what I want to encourage people to do is don't let your family have to guess what they think you would want. If we put our wishes in writing, or at least make it known to family, then that makes it a lot easier. Then family doesn't have to make these really tough decisions, because we were as confident as we were, is that I was, at least for me, that our mom would want to live that way. Even after deciding to just do the end of life care for the hospice, it was a tough decision. She lived about 9 or 10 days after that, and it was a very long period of time. But when we make our requests made known to our family um, and relatives, then that makes it so much easier because making decisions like this can really, I think it can break a family. It can really cause a lot of discord. My sisters and I were, thank God, on the same page on this one. We did everything by vote, and it was a 3-0 vote for the to do the end of life care for her with the hospice care. And so that's the medical part. Then I want to encourage everyone to make sure that they um, let everyone know what they want, if they want a funeral, what they want that to look like. Because with my sisters and I, with our mom, she didn't make that clear. Sometimes she said she wanted to be buried. Sometimes she said she wanted to be cremated. And then when we just asked the last, I don't know, couple of years, she said, "I don't care, just surprise me." And so, excuse me, that's what we did. We opted for um, the cremation. Excuse me, but we differed as siblings on what the service would look like. My oldest sister doesn't like to see human remains in a casket. She does not like that at all, not one bit. And we can't blame her. That's just how she feels. Whereas my middle sister kind of pictured it was the traditional funeral where her remains are still in the chapel, and it's a traditional funeral, and she's there, her remains are there, the visitation is the day before. So maybe those who couldn't make it to the service can go the night before because it was a weekday service. It's hard to get a Saturday um, funeral service at a larger funeral home, which is where we went through. And so uh, I was the kind of tiebreaker for that. I saw it from both ways, but in the end, my middle sister felt really strongly, and so I went with that. And our older sister, she respected that. Thank God we were all responsible adults, and we're able to get through things. And just we compromised with the once the wake was over on the day of the funeral, the casket would be closed and it would not be reopened again. And so at that time, that's when my sister, older sister, was able to come in for the funeral portion of her service, of our mom's services. But again, if this decisions like this can break a family, especially if people aren't close, if you've got a lot of mixed families that are out there. In theory, that's what my sisters and I are. We have the same mother, but they have a different dad than I did. And sometimes my sisters and I were close before. I felt like this brought us closer, thank God for that. But situations like this can really cause a lot of discord in a family, and it can break up families. Whereas if we make these decisions while we're still alive and we can leave our instructions for our loved ones. It's just a matter of them following our instructions, not making these decisions on our behalf. Thank God our mom had insurance. So I'd encourage everyone, if you don't have life insurance, get it. What I will say is check your policies. What our mom's policy that she got when she retired from the government was $45,000 and had gone down to $22,000, which was fine. Thank God she had the cash and the insurance to cover her end of life expenses, and we were able to close out her estate and not owe anybody anything, and not no GoFundMe's or anything like that. So please make sure if you don't have insurance, life insurance, get it, please. And then lastly is what you want your service to look like, as we explained just now. And here's one thing that really bothered the heck out of me. And you can, what I want to go back and say is you can prepay your services. My wife prepaid for our services. I would just want to be cremated. Uh, this was maybe 10 years ago. It was 900, $1,000. Cremation is way more expensive now. But because our mom was going to be cremated, and but we wanted her remains in the chapel for the services. We had to rent a casket, and I'm thinking, okay, it's a 2 hour visitation the night before, then a 1 hour wake, 1 hour service. That's 4 hours. We need a casket for. What is that? A couple $100 to rent a casket. It was $1,000, $1,000 to rent a casket for a total of 4 hours. I thought, and so here's what I want to close out with: make your arrangements if you can ahead of time. Prepay. You can make it. You can even prepay in payments. You lock in the rates for whatever services you want at the time of the prepayment. Not, you know, preferably we all have a long life ahead of us. But what I have learned is that the funeral industry, it's a necessary business. God bless them. But it's a lot of add-ons that will just suck you dry if you have the money available, or even if you don't have the money available. They will just. We were just looking at the casket binder that they had with these different caskets, from 2,000 to $30,000 for a casket, something that will be on display for a few hours and then be buried in the ground, more than likely never to be seen again. To spend thousands of dollars on something that's going to be buried in the ground 6 feet below, never to be seen again by human eyes, I think that's a bit much. But that's just me. So I didn't want this video to go on this long, but I'll close it out here. Thank you again so much for watching. Please take, I know it took me a while to say it, but please, let's make sure that we're taking care of our health, and then making sure that our friends and our loved ones, or whomever is designated as our power of attorney for healthcare and for finances, understands what we want our end of life to look like if, God forbid, we become ill, we become incapacitated, and cannot speak for ourselves, what we want that to look like, so that our friends and family don't have to make these tough decisions, which can be really difficult decisions to make, can break up families, and make sure that we want whatever our wishes are for our, if we want a funeral service, what we want it to look like, things like that are also known in advance, so that, again, friends and family don't have to make these decisions on our behalf, guessing what they think we would want. So I'll close out here. This is longer than I wanted to go. May God bless and keep each and every one of you. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless.